62 years. That's how long the deep state has been hiding the truth about who really killed President John F. Kennedy and why. But today, that wall of secrecy is finally crumbling. The Trump administration has released thousands of pages of documents related to the assassination, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Everyone's kind of upset. Even my guest, who's sitting right here with me, he initially saw the documents that came out and he said, there's nothing here. And he said, I'm going to go find them. I'm going to find the documents. I'm talking about Travis Gillmore, direct from the Epoch Times, exclusive access to James Angleton's testimony to the Church Committee, which is considered the holy grail for JFK researchers. And Angleton wasn't just any CIA officer. He was the head of counterintelligence, the man who knew where the bodies were buried. Now, as we step into 2025, though, one thing is clear: de-dollarization is not stopping. It's accelerating. China and other BRICS nations are scared of President Trump, and it's making them more determined to reduce their dependence on the U.S. dollar and establish themselves as global economic superpowers. Their secret weapon is gold. In fact, China resumed buying gold. And you know what's even more telling? They underreport their buys. Doesn't it make you wonder why? They recognize its global value and ability to withstand economic shocks, but gold is a global asset with innate value. It's tangible, relatable, reliable, and immune to economic manipulation. China and other BRICS countries, they want to be prepared. They just don't want you to know it. But this isn't just about nations. It's about you. So make sure you go to nextnewsgold.com or call the number 877-646-5347 and make sure you can get 10 free silver coins when you invest. Tell them Gary Franchi sent you. And now, for the first time ever, Travis is here, and he is going to reveal what Angleton told Congress behind closed doors. Travis, welcome to the Raw feed.
Thanks so much, Gary.
Wow. Okay, I'm really excited for this because we were both at the White House on the day the JFK filed. We were waiting all day, and everyone's like, what did they drop? Did they drop? Did they drop? And of course, they drop them like 6 o'clock at night when everyone's pretty much going home. And then I think we spoke the next day. And what was your, and before we get into the deep stuff, what was your initial reaction that you told me?
So initial reaction was not good. And what we saw about 7 p.m. Eastern time we got about 1,100 PDF links put up on the National Archives website. And President Trump had been promising us 80,000 documents. So initially the thought was, are there really 80,000 documents in these 1,100 links? We start going through all these digitized documents. These are open to the public. So we're all pouring through them and not impressed. Like a lot of things that could be misinformation, a lot of stuff that's essentially supporting the narrative, and a lot of irrelevant, redundant. Many of these scans are completely illegible. When you go to look at it, even though it's technically digitized, it's worthless. You can't see anything even there. And then there's no organization. There's no structure to this. You can't search by keyword. You can't do there's no way to actually find what you need to find. Well, then about 10:30 p.m., they dumped another 1,000 links, essentially. So now we have about 2,100 PDFs. These represent about 63,000 files. So I was disappointed. Not that none of us are expecting a smoking gun, but we are looking for transparency here. Like you said, it's been 62 years. It's time we get to see this.
So I felt that there was going to be poison pills peppered throughout that were going to just further the official narrative. And you felt the same way?
Absolutely. And then, exactly. And the redundancies on these things, it's like where they're almost trying to overwhelm the researcher, where you give up. You just keep looking through these things. There's so much at one time, so much of it's irrelevant. But I went and asked the White House, what's going on? Because I know Trump's on. He's been campaigning on this forever. We know he wants transparency here. And so I just asked. It looks like 60,000 documents, told there's 80,000. And you and I both have excellent relationships with the press secretaries, which it's amazing at the White House, the access that we have.
It really is.
And they just told me they're there, but you got to go get them. You got to go to the archives and do the work. So I was there yesterday at the White House and missed the briefing. I took that as a signal. I need to get to the archives and find this stuff. And it takes time. They're only open 9 to 5. They have these.
And you were there for like the entire day.
Yesterday. I was there yesterday and then the entire day today. Yes. I showed up as soon as they opened the doors this morning. I was there. They shuttled me over. So the main National Archives, where they keep our founding documents, they don't really keep a lot of stuff there. So there's some genealogy things and there's some stuff there. And then you have to really, you got to put in the work. So they shuttle me off to another location. You get there and you start talking to the archivists that are actually the experts in this JFK material. And what I found out today was that they're not ready for this. While Trump has definitely declassified it, everything is available, they're not prepared. These items are still behind locked stacks. There's different information depending on who you talk to as to what's actually available. When I first got there, they told me I needed to file FOIA. And I know you don't need Freedom of Information Act for a declassified document. And so I just pushed and said, no, I don't need FOIA. I was actually sent here by the White House. And that, we started going up the chain. So they take me to another archivist who can't help me. And then we get to the records director and to the division chief and to the bureau chief. And then we have real access. Now they're telling me, if you can tell me what you want, I'll go get it. That then starts the second conundrum. How do you know what you don't know? All we know is that there's 17,000 documents. As you said, this one's a holy grail, so I went after it first. When I first got to the bureau chief, I told her, this is the document I want first. It took them hours. I assumed I wasn't going to get it, thought I was going to have to come tell you some pity story about what had really happened, but they showed up with it. And then they're really earnest. They came to me and said, you're ahead of the curve. We knew people would be coming. We weren't thinking it was going to be this fast. And the documents, while they're open, they're not available to the public yet, really. When you pull some of these documents, there's still redactions. So I basically worked out an agreement with the director there that, well, if I find the redacted document, can you get me the original? So we're essentially helping each other. I'm trying to help the archive, trying to help any other researcher that comes after me so that these documents will all be available. And we've got this plan worked out. So I found dozens and dozens of redacted documents today that I've then submitted back to them, which they'll give me in the morning. I also have thousands of documents I've already requested, which they lock these JFK files behind locked stacks. So not every...
So what is this picture here?
So this is just one of the carts that I was dealing with today. So you're looking at thousands of documents here in these different boxes, which...
And these are the JFK files?
These are some of them, yes. And all of these were before Trump signed this executive order and directed on March 18th that they be released. None of these were available to the public, or some of them were available but with redactions, with the key information eliminated.
So some of these labels, like...
Yes. So we're looking at FBI files here. So if you go to the one to the left, the box to the left of that one there, this is a really interesting box here. This is the FBI's files on James Angleton. And this is separate than the box where I got the testimony to the church committee. But I've requested basically everything that's been classified regarding Angleton. I want all his personnel files. I want everything the FBI ever had on him. And not just him, there's other people too. But because I already had this lead that we know we want the church committee document, we know that there's a lot of talk today about unelected bureaucrats with power. This is the ultimate unelected bureaucrat with power. As a counter-espionage chief, working directly with Alan Dulles, they called him the Ghost. He had many different nicknames. Incredibly, incredibly powerful man, operating between 54 and 74 in intelligence agencies. And even prior to that was CIA work, 54 to 74. Prior to that, he was OSS. This is a long time spook. Deep, deep secrets, tons of stories to tell. So there's a lot to uncover here.
I mean, those are fresh stickers, declassified.
Yes, we're forcing them to put these on. we're making them
do not
the
pull. These records have been digitized and are available. Okay, so
but not
these
everything in there was.
Not everything
was.
Really?
No, that's why they brought it to me. So, and the way it works is that it's very challenging the way they have their system set up. Some could argue it's intentionally cumbersome, so that you can't really search and just find a document you want. I can find a series of documents or a collection of records. And then I know, well, if there's one thing in that collection that might be valuable, let me just see it all. And what happened with the one where it was saying they're digitized, some in that box were digitized, some were not. So they brought it to me. And there was Angleton info in here. One of these boxes here is Hoover's secret files. So I pulled his index cards. There was one of the other things that you find going through these documents, and even in the digitized documents that are available to the public that you can read, is the CIA and the FBI directing their agents to destroy documents. And in Hoover's box, I've photographed multiple documents where so when you get into this classified material, there's always a top sheet that kind of gives you an idea. And once you start to learn their codes, you can kind of quickly move through thousands of documents where you know, like, oh, I've already seen this, or this has already been out. But when you see deletions, or they like to call them postponements, a postponement just means that the public can't see it. And so tons of these things, it's either redacted or deleted. And then with Hoover, just throughout the file, you see destroyed, 23 files destroyed, all the mail destroyed.
Oh my goodness.
So, And the other question when we look at this, and what many researchers have asked is, are we really getting everything? Is this true transparency with these 80,000 documents? I mean, there's approximately 6 million documents already in the archives that were already open to the public. And these 80,000 are supposed to be the last without redactions. But no one really knows. So I asked one of the archivists today, is this really everything? And does this represent everything that the intelligence agencies knew? And he told me absolutely not. That they destroyed, that the archives would never destroy anything. And after having talked to the Bureau chief and the people in command, I honestly feel that they are just protecting the documents that are given to them. But if the document's never given to them, therein lies the trouble. It's never actually archived. And the archivist was adamant that the real juice is destroyed before it ever gets here.
Wow. Okay, so let's dig into some of this stuff. All right. You were there. Did you get to physically handle these documents?
Yes, I did.
Like you could hold the actual JFK documents?
Yes, I held all the documents today, and there's rules. They make you go through an orientation. If you break the rule, if you try to steal the document, if you even try to fold a document and put a crease in it, all likelihood they're going to pull your researcher card and you'll never be allowed back in. So there's very strict rules. There's people walking by constantly. And there's a protocol. It's cumbersome. You have to request from one office, you have to research in another office, so you're moving back and forth, and they're only open 8 hours a day anyways, which sounds like a lot of time until you're trying to deal with 17,000 pages.
And how many pages did you actually get to analyze in the last, today and yesterday, 48 hours?
I would say, so I didn't get the full time at the archives yesterday, but I would say that I've gone through at least 3,000 documents already. But some of these I could go through fast. Now, when I realized that, oh, this is important, I just sit there and photograph everything, because I know if I sit there and try to read 1,000 documents right now, I'm going to run out of time. I need to get everything in my hands, photograph it, get more documents in my hand. And I can be reading things and have them pulling more. So I figured out a system where by the time I'm done with this, they're already bringing me another cart. And then we just keep photographing and moving on.
Wow. And then you sit and read them.
Yeah, and then we sit and read them. Yeah, and that's the fun part. And I'm reading as I'm photographing. I'm scanning real fast, just looking for those keywords and the juicy red meat.
Okay, but there was something else that you had mentioned about with the keywords, and they make it difficult, and the cross-referencing, and then if there's documents there that you don't know are there, how do you even know to search for them? Did they give you any assistance with that in respect to that?
Not really. So they try, but they can't tell you. They don't even know what's in the catalog. And that I got really good rapport with one gentleman who helped me so that once I could find something good, he could lead me to other things that are similar to that. So they're definitely there trying to help, but they're also overwhelmed, and they don't know that these things have been locked. I mean, only certain employees are even allowed into the JFK room, which even still with them declassified, they told me it's why it takes them so long to pull the records. Only certain people are allowed to go in there, which they are expecting that to change to equal. Whether they're going to move the JFK documents out and into the regular stacks makes the most sense, because there are other items that are in the lock stacks as well that potentially are still classified. And I did run into that issue. So they have what they call the JFK collection. So anything that's in or that was categorized in the JFK collection, Trump has declassified it. But there are a lot of other peripheral documents that do relate to the assassination potentially, or to just geopolitical activities at the time, that are still classified. And I tried to pull some boxes today, some personnel records and different things, and they did tell me that for those specifically, I'd have to file FOIA, which I filed the FOIA, now we just wait and we'll get it. But everything else, you can request it, basically 45 minutes to an hour. They're bringing you a cart full of documents and you do your thing.
Wow. This is absolutely fascinating. Okay, so now you guys have the backstory on how we got to this point. Okay, this is your first post. You just posted this on X. Epoch Times is now in possession of the long sought-after transcript of James Angleton's testimony to the Church Committee. More details coming soon. Okay, so I want to go through this kind of page by page, because you have approximately, what you said, 75 to 100 pages?
Yes.
They are in your possession right now. They've never been released.
Yes.
And we're going to get a good preview of some of these, and I'm going to help you get this out into the public. We talked about that before this segment. So I'm going to help you, because I want the documents too. Hey, put them on a USB, send them over. I'll do it. I'll spend all night working on it. Okay, so what do we have here? This page on screen. Tell us what it is.
So this is what you get this is like the cover sheet.
This is the cover sheet.
So, and it's going to tell you The important thing, what you really need is a record number. If you have a record number for a document, it's very easy to find it. The problem is we don't know many of these record numbers. There's no way to get it. So on this one, this record number had been out. So we knew that this existed, just no one had been able to get it. And if you see down here at the bottom where it's telling you top secret, referred, and postponed in full, a lot of times you'll see postponed, like there's 19 postponements or there's 7 postponements. This one, they just postponed in full.
Where does it say that?
Up just a little bit, right here where it says current status. So it was last reviewed in 97 and was postponed in full, which just meant that nothing, public cannot see this.
Okay. All right, so this is our cover page.
Yes, and then there's a little piece of paper down there at the bottom. This is what they give me. This is what, I have to put this in the photo. This allows me to take photo of a top secret document because it's proving that I took it after it was declassified.
Wow. Okay, so that's a very important part. So you had to move that from page to page?
I've subsequently learned, because I was trying to take thousands of pictures today, that I would just put it right below or right above. So, and they'll check. They're walking constantly, and if they see me take a photo without that, they can make me delete every photo I've taken in there.
Wow.
I don't want to break any of the rules. The same way I feel at the White House. We got to play the game,
Yeah.
and it pays off.
So we got 4 pictures on the screen. Where do you want to go?
So we could look at one of these. This was just a snapshot. So I was just giving people a taste here because I posted these from inside the National Archives.
Okay.
And I just wanted to let the public know that, because this has been one that people have been looking for decades. We've known that it existed. Everyone's been wanting
So this is part of the testimony here?
This is, yes.
And Mr. Miller is speaking, Mr. Angleton is speaking.
Yes.
What are we looking at?
And Angleton is the spy chief. Miller was also one of his colleagues, essentially. And then you'll see in other pages where you have the senators are questioning them. So this,
Okay, so there's the little sticker.
Yes.
Top secret.
And
Totally unredacted.
And they're talking here about strategic deception. And this is one of the things, like where they talk about how you're advancing your strategies through disinformation and deception, which is somewhat expected in a spy agency. One of the ironies here is that we have a counterintelligence chief in James Angleton, who was later found out was also a double agent. And he was a double agent for the Israeli government, got forced out of his role in the CIA at the end of 1974 by then Director Colby. And the irony of this entire document is that they're talking about defectors and then how do you identify if you've been penetrated by a double agent? And it's the king double agent that's doing the testifying. I mean, it's brilliance on another level or evil genius, depending on how you look at things.
Okay, so this is another page. Oh, these are the same almost.
Could be the same page. That's error in publishing
and
there.
Hearing held before Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, Thursday, January 22nd, 1976. So this was when they had the hearing?
Yes.
In 76.
Yes, it was. And he had been forced out just prior to that. Last day of 74 was his final day at the CIA.
And at the bottom it says Ward and Paul. What is that?
Probably the attorneys that were, I'm speculating here, but they were allowed to have legal counsel. So I'm not sure if this is the Select Committee's legal counsel or if this was potentially Angleton's.
Okay, so this is the United States Senate report of proceedings, hearing held, Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities.
And that's the Church Committee.
The Church Committee. Okay, so that's just the first taste. Okay, so now what do we got here? This says we're working with the National Archives. Okay, you just explained basically
Yes.
what's going on here.
And so this is one of the redacted documents I found in the FBI files, also dealing
Yes.
with Angleton.
Okay, so this was redacted, but
Tomorrow morning, I'll have the unredacted version. So, and I'll post it once I get that unredacted version tomorrow. So I notified.
they haven't given you the
No, they told me, I talked to them at the end of the day. So this is 3 p.m. maybe that I find these. And so I go to my liaison there and tell them like, okay, these are the boxes I found redactions. And then at the same time, I gave my requests a whole nother sheet of things that I want for tomorrow. So that tomorrow when I show up, they'll have a whole nother box so that I can start looking for redactions while they're pulling me the originals. And what they said is that their intention was to do this, was to go box by box, find the redactions, put the originals in. And I'm expediting the process essentially.
Wow, you're an American hero.
We're just playing our role.
Yeah, just doing our job, right? So how do they redact this? It looks like a marker. Like what kind of?
It is a marker, but they make a copy of the original and then they redact the copy. So what he told me is that they will go replace the redacted copy with the actual original document.
The original document.
Yes, and many of this one wasn't, but I saw tons of original documents today where I'm looking at J. Edgar Hoover's handwriting. You're looking at different analysts for the CIA and the FBI, all their handwriting, and their notes oftentimes will tell you things where...
I mean, are you able to see these? We're talking about documents with actual pen.
Actual
imprints.
pen, yes, absolutely.
Wow, this is fascinating. Let's continue here. Okay, so to explain what this picture was, full document coming soon. What
This is
here?
another document. So this is Angleton in his testimony to the House Select Committee on Assassinations. I want to say this is 78, October of 78.
Yeah.
And this document has been open to the public, but there were 19 postponements in the document that was already released. Tomorrow I'll have the actual document. So this one has deletions inside of it, but I've already notified the archives that we need the original on this as well. And like I said, this one was released maybe in the late 90s or early 2000s where they released the redacted version, and then now we will have the real one.
Okay, so now we want to get into this next post here. Okay, as promised, the Angleton testimony document will be published right here. Okay, so we'll zoom in. What are we looking at here now?
So this was a newer cover sheet for that same document where it's saying that they consulted with the agency. It's a top secret document, consulted with the CIA, and the CIA told them in 97 to withhold it, that the public cannot see this. And then it had never been reviewed since 97. No review board had ever looked at it again.
1997. Okay, and now what's this?
This is possibly just similar information, maybe put out by a different agency, but it also corroborates the other stuff. And these are the things like the little words up top, the subjects, that's basically the only thing you can search for. It would be really nice if we could keyword search for everything in the document. But when, like here, it would come up as Angleton or any of these keywords, but anything else that's in there, you won't find. And this is why you really kind of have to dig through stuff. You can't assume that the thing you want is going to be mentioned in the subject line. That you just kind of have to look at everything related to those topics and see what were they talking about? Could this potentially relate to the area of study that I'm looking at?
So where's the subject line?
Subject line is where it says Angleton, counterintelligence, CIA, methodology, FBI.
Okay.
So, and that's...
subjects, yes, okay.
It's pretty
That's
on
what it's
point.
related to.
Yes, which is pretty good for this document. But it's a 75-page document. There's a lot of things said in there and a lot of names mentioned that are not mentioned in the subject line.
Okay. Okay, now what's this?
And this one, I believe we saw this again. I was just publishing this. Now I'm going page to finish so that no one can say that I kept out documents.
Okay, this is top secret.
And all in a top secret folder. I'm not allowed to take it out of the folder. So I can hold it and I can turn the pages, but I have to leave it in its folder. And then you can't.
So this is a page, but it's in a protected sheet. Like it's a clear...
No sheet. Just the page.
Okay, so the edges are like the black border is actually like a sleeve?
No, it's been, in order to put the document in here, they did a Xerox of whatever the original was. Probably the CIA provided it to the archives as this.
Okay, here's more.
Then now we're starting to get into the topic of it. So this is them describing, this is the committee, who's there. This is all the things that the committee has to do to abide by protocol. So it's basically saying that everyone that's present at the time, the actual meeting.
So basically like the meeting minutes
Yes.
of the church committee of Angleton's testimony.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the beginning.
Yes, so they're swearing them in here. And they're asking the spy chief that is a master of deception and was a double agent to swear to tell the truth. And he does.
Senator Hart of Colorado. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and be sworn and get underway if you don't mind. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Angleton, I do. Miller, I do. Senator Hart of Colorado. Thank you very much. Mr. Angleton at least has been before us before and routinely will remind all witnesses that they preserve all of their constitutional rights, including the right to counsel, right to remain silent, and so forth and so on. And I have member of committee present during all testimony. It is my understanding we have no prepared statements. Oh, so they didn't even open up with prepared statements.
No.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
They just said they didn't want to talk about nothing.
Nothing.
I'm not going to say
Just in
anything
case it gets
today.
declassified.
Yeah. No, guys, sorry, we're not going to. I kind of know what I'm saying. You guys ask the questions. Yep, that sounds about right. Okay. Okay, so here is Angleton discussing counterintelligence methods, how the agency managed defectors, and compartmentalization within the CIA. Now, I want people to understand. They're watching this. They're going. Everyone watching this right now is going, "Where's the smoking gun, Franchi?"
Yeah.
Right. So you got to set us up to what we're looking at and how we get into that, because I know everyone's like, okay, you got the meeting minutes from the Kennedy assassination hearing. Good for you. You know, like, oh, they got sworn in. Like this is kind of like the, you know, the minutia you got to dig through.
Yes.
But it's important to understand just the depth of what we're looking at here.
Yes.
And how detailed the information actually is. And these documents have never been seen before.
No, never been seen. Well, only to someone that had classified status.
Okay. So here's the counterintelligence methods that were discussed in this document here. So walk us through this one.
So they're talking about their strategies here for managing double agents. And so they're constantly fearful of other agents penetrating our agencies, while at the same time they want to penetrate other agencies. And the irony, of course, is that he has penetrated at the highest level. And with the compartmentalization and the methods by which they operated, while there's no smoking gun, the hints that are provided and the details that are provided show that the CIA, the hierarchy, was completely unaware of what certain elements were doing.
Because it was so compartmentalized.
So compartmentalized. And what's mentioned in this document is that Angleton didn't have to have any approval by anyone else. Angleton and Dulles could operate on their own. So if the counterintelligence chief had an idea or Dulles had an idea and they thought, let's do this, nobody else had to know. The president didn't have to know. Hoover didn't have to know. That, in my opinion, is one of the key elements that's in this document, is that there are no safeguards and there's no way to know who's telling the truth, especially given the fact that Dulles was fired. I mean, we know the backstory of what happened with Dulles and the CIA. So we have essentially a vengeful CIA operative and another counterintelligence chief that together can do as they please.
And they were basically still employed by the government,
Yes.
still operating. Even though they were fired, they just moved them off-site and they just kept their power, kept their infrastructure in place, and carried out all kinds of dirty tricks.
Yes.
All the way up to the Kennedy assassination.
That's what many people believe. Even I interviewed Bobby Kennedy years ago, and I asked him about this, Bobby Kennedy Jr., and asked him about this specifically. What do you believe happened to your father? What do you believe happened to your uncle? He laid it out in clear terms, CIA involvement, without a doubt, and told me that his father knew immediately that the CIA was involved. And then, off topic here, but then also involved in killing Bobby Kennedy Sr. as well. That's the belief of Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Well, you bring up Bobby Kennedy, and we're anticipating the release of those documents,
Yes.
the MLK documents. And aren't they releasing the 9/11 documents as well?
I would love to see that. I don't know that Trump's mentioned that, that'd be a beautiful progression.
Yeah.
If we could see some real truth on that matter.
If we could find out what happened with all that thermite, that'd be great. Thanks, Trump. Yeah, 400,000 pounds of thermite shipped to the World Trade Center a week beforehand. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
That's another show.
That's another show.
But regarding the MLK documents, the archivist today was telling me that
I'm sorry, I turned the page here, but
Oh no, you're good.
go ahead.
So the archivist told me today that they're really excited about the MLK documents. So there
Really?
was a lot of FBI stuff going on, some COINTELPRO. They were basically trying to discredit MLK. A lot of this stuff is, so there's been drips, like the public, we've seen enough to know that it's going on, but we've never seen the full picture. And that's one of the really exciting things that we're going to get. And I'll be in the archives digging those up. As soon as we get any of this stuff, we're going to go get it all.
Well, I remember seeing some of the early MLK stuff that was released. Maybe it was old. It just talked about, his private life and things that he was doing that, you wouldn't expect a pastor to do. I don't know if that was planted as misinformation or not.
Yes.
Because the poison pills are peppered throughout this. So we could talk, when you get into it, we could talk about MLK. Okay, so this is more Miller. I would have to respond to that. So this is back and forth. Miller is talking to...
Yes, and Miller is also, he's intelligence agency as well. So they're basically testifying. This committee was trying to decide, like, do we need to reorganize the CIA? What do we need to do? They had a feeling that things were happening that were maybe not above board, but they were not digging into the details. And even in this document, if you look at the questions these senators were asking, and we see this today in the political sphere, that some are asking tough questions, others are basically playing softball games, they're wasting the time of the committee, and they don't dig in where they need to. But the goal of it was to figure out how out of control are these agencies, and does Congress need to step in? Or does someone need to exercise authority out over these things?
Yeah, because they're basically become rogue agencies, and the Senate has the oversight, and and then you have senators who are compromised and others who don't care, and the softball questions are going to come from the guys who want to waste time.
Yes.
And they're not going to provide the proper oversight, which is required, and maybe some of them are just scared.
Yes.
You know, I remember years ago I was visiting the White House. I was just walking by with my wife. We were here for some event. I think I was protesting the Federal Reserve or something. And we walked past the White House, and someone walks out of the gate that we now walk in and out of every day. And all I heard him say on the phone is, "God, I love the agency." I'm like, what the hell? Like, I heard him say it as I'm walking past, you know? So there are people who are probably still terrified at this point, because if they think the CIA was behind it, or if they knew, they're not going to ask those tough questions.
Yes.
And they're just going to let things slide because they don't want to get, be the next Kennedy assassination or Bobby Kennedy.
And when you read this, where they're talking about deception and it's psychological warfare, and not only to foreign nations, like when you read through the document here, they even talk about how, well, it's really advantageous when another nation has all this information on their citizens, because then we can just tap in, or we can get a double agent and basically get everything. And one of the senators asks, well, aren't we vulnerable to these same things? And he's like, well, yeah, but that's why we just need to be better at our jobs. And it's a really challenging situation for the agency. I mean, depending on how you look at it, trying to protect national security while also at the same time trying to stay moral. It's a challenge, to say the least.
Well, you remember when Pompeo, when he was giving that talk, he was sitting in a chair on stage, and Pompeo, who was the CIA director for a time, he says that they were taught to lie, and he laughs about it, and it's like, that's what they do. Like,
yes.
How do you maintain morality when you're a straight up lie? You are lying. You are practicing deception.
Yes.
Like, man, I'd hate to be at that guy's life review. When his time comes. Anyway, so let's continue. We've got this document here. This looks like more back and forth between Johnson and Miller. So this must be what? Senator Johnson is...
Senator Johnson, yes.
Is asking Miller questions here. So in these cases, were there such operations were they cleared with...
And this is really interesting about the compartmentalization. Johnson is just curious. So if we have these operations, who is in control? And you'll see Miller immediately is going to defer to Angleton. And this is the senator that's trying to figure out who really has the authority here.
And this whole testimony is 75 pages?
75 pages, yes.
Okay, here's another one.
And this is where Angleton and Miller are kind of saying, well, sometimes we'll check with the FBI, sometimes we'll check with other agencies or other law enforcement, and then other times we'll just do what we have to do. And later it might be a separate page where they pin him down to it and say, well, is there anyone between you and Dulles? And he says no.
Well, look at that last line right there. It says, Mr. Johnson. It says, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Angleton, do you know of any instances where the CIA, I'm guessing CIA staff, counterintelligence staff, or higher authority within the CIA went outside the agency for approval for important counter espionage?
Yes.
Wow. What's the answer? What's
Yes.
the answer? Is that on the next page? I hope it's right here. Is this the next page?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Angleton, he says,
And at the top, he's going to say, there's a little bit more above.
okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
Oh, it's okay.
Oops. The Attorney General.
He's basically saying, like, well, it could be at the level of the Attorney General.
Does this happen frequently? Is this a typical procedure for a major counter operation?
And his
Angleton.
answer is really telling.
Angleton, if it was a major matter, it's on the basis of need to know.
Yes. And apparently the only ones that needed to know were he and Dolan.
Yeah. So the two guys are right there conspiring. Hey, don't tell them. Don't tell them. No one else needs to know. It's between us. This is sick, man. This is sick. And then we're like, I don't mean to like laugh about it, but it's like,
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So it looks like he's continuing here. He says, you have another kind of case where a foreigner came to me and stated his government had a defector from the bloc, an excellent agent, and they would be prepared to give us the agent if we would take over lock, stock, and barrel, handle it in such a fashion that there would be no exposure because of the political consequences to their government. I would go to the director, the deputy director, spell out the matter, and come to a determination whether we wanted to take the case on. This particular case involving not only a person who had been in the intelligence service of the opposition of a long time, but also access to codes and a great deal of deciphered material. So it was kicked back and forth at a great deal. I'm sorry, this is hard to read. These kicked back and forth, and there was a determination made that we could take it over. The staff would take it over in its entirety, and therefore it meant I called in Scotty, and we pulled together our team. We sent them abroad, and we handled. So this is all about like how they would handle like extracting a spy or something.
Basically a spy from another nation that's wanting to come and become a spy for the CIA, whether as a double agent or just to completely switch.
Wow.
And a lot of this, what he's talking about, is KGB. They were really focused at the time on infiltrating Soviet intelligence and also bringing their agents over here as well. And it's also interesting, later they mentioned, one of the senators asks, like, how difficult is that? And he says, oh, it's very challenging. And then they said, well, how about the operations in Africa and Latin America? And he's like, oh, that's easy. We can do whatever we want basically there.
Wow. So what's this about being buried?
That's
Bury the individual?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson, did you say bury the individual?
It sounds bad, but what he really means here in buried is like maybe the spy's cover has been blown, and so now you just need to
Give a little more backstory, because I just jumped to it. I don't think no one watching has the context you can provide.
Yes, so they have he's just talking and says that if something goes wrong, or if we just finish the operation, then we'll bury the individual. And the senator immediately says, like, what do you mean by buried? Like, he's just believing that potentially he's saying, are you killing off the person once you're done with them? And he says, no, like, it's basically their jargon for giving them another identity and pushing them into American society where they are no longer a spy and trying to keep them safe. And they mentioned in here many times that if they try to turn a KGB agent and something goes wrong, that absolutely the Soviets would have just killed the agent as soon as they found out.
Goodness. Okay, so we got that. And then we have another page here. Mr. Angleton with I apologize for the crop here. Mr. Angleton with the added fact that we did not disclose all the facts from our identity. What's going on in this page?
So he's basically here, he's just explaining some of the counter-espionage techniques and also how you at times have to create multiple covers. So that's one of the other things that these documents, both the digitized and the non-digitized, have shown us. There's always been speculation about CIA operating companies so that they could have their covers. And now we're actually starting to see some of these names. Now, this is no longer speculation. They were absolutely using what look to be private businesses. Oftentimes they are conducting private business, but then you have either the head of the company as an agent, or you have employees in there so that they can use it. And in the one page here, it's basically saying that there's times when you need multiple covers, in case multiple layers of cover, in case one gets blown, then you could try to play it off that he's not a spy.
This is totally wild.
The level of deception, the counter espionage and deception is the key elements of this document, of just showing it's the true cloak and dagger, where they are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goal and lie the entire time. They mentioned in this repeatedly how they have to, like, you have to deceive. Like, without deception, they can't achieve their goals. And then that raises the question, what level of deception are we getting as well when they turn the messaging to us?
Okay, so there was another point here that I wanted to bring up. That we had this came out at 24 hours ago, that Oswald was a bad shot.
Yes. And that, I mean, the official story is he fired 3 shots in 8.3 seconds, the second and third hitting the president. And then we have multiple files from the KGB where this is their quote, that he was a poor shooter. They called it an elaborate coup. And we have the FBI and the CIA, so they're monitoring KGB communications. And then, so we don't have the KGB communication, we have the CIA saying, this is what the KGB and the Russians are saying. And then they're monitoring everyone's. As journalists, we always knew this, that you get targeted when you start telling the truth. As you said, you've had the big power trying to take you down just for actually being willing, having the courage to just tell it like it is. We see that exact same thing in many of these documents where they go after journalists, they go after authors, and their fiancés. They don't stop at just the person. They want surveillance on the entire family. And it begs the question, if you don't have anything to hide, why are you spending resources on people that are just doing their job as journalists?
I want to take a look at what General Flynn had to say. General Flynn names Allen Dulles as a potential co-conspirator in the JFK assassination. JFK fired Dulles as CIA director, but Flynn says Dulles went on to an off-site safe house in D.C. and continued to run the CIA. That's what we were just talking about.
Yes. And that's what this new document from the Church Committee implies, is it doesn't say directly that this is what he was doing. But as you just read, whenever they say, oh, it's a major operation, yeah, well, then I just take it to the director and we make our decision. And the question then becomes...
Because at the time of this committee, he was what?
He was gone. Both of them were gone. Technically, no longer in the CIA.
Technically.
But yes, that's the official story. But he was, so at this time, when he's testifying, he's presumably only an Israeli agent.
Okay, so let's watch this clip with General Flynn.
So that old audio of Clifton Carter, the former head of the DNC and LBJ's bestie, right? And that Saul Estes guy, they're replaying that old audio all over social media. And you've got Clifton Carter there saying and claiming that LBJ was in on this, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm hearing Roger Stone say that Nixon told him, hey, I wanted that seat too, but I didn't go to the lengths LBJ did and have him killed.
Right.
I mean, do you think that the vice president was possibly involved too back then?
Yeah, I think we're going to find out a lot. And I'll give you another name, Dan.
Okay.
Dulles. Dulles, Dulles Airport, right? The Dulles was the CIA director under Kennedy. Mm-hmm. Kennedy fired him. Dulles then went, just like John Brennan and Obama have done, they went to a little safe house, a little house off-site in Washington, D.C., and they continued to run the CIA after he was fired. That's well known. So Dulles is another name along with LBJ. So,
wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I think more and more to come.
All right, some fireworks here. So that
fireworks indeed. Any final thoughts?
I've requested a lot on Dulles. We're going to know a lot about Dulles. We're going to know a lot about LBJ. I've specifically requested, there is an interview LBJ conducted in '64 with McCone. I think it's John McCone. He was the CIA director at the time. That is also a highly desirable document. I have that on request, should be ready for me in the morning. I've also requested everything about McCone. I want every document. If there's a classified document with the CIA director that came in after Kennedy, I want it. And the same with everything regarding Angleton, LBJ, Dulles. Like, if you look at my notes, like what he was just saying, that's exactly who we're pulling. We want everything related to them. The smoking gun is going to be difficult. I know that's what the conspiracy crowd wants, or what
everybody watching is. They're going to look at this video and they're going to complain that we didn't provide a smoking gun. But you guys have to understand that when Travis has to go to the actual archives and go through these binders and try to find out what's in it, it takes a tremendous amount of time, especially if it's not digitized, right?
Yes, definitely. And even the digitized stuff is so trashed that the quality of it is so difficult that it takes time to read. These are high quality papers compared to some of the stuff that was scanned. And I questioned some of the things that were scanned that potentially it was bad. I went and looked, they Xeroxed it. So it almost looks like before the agencies gave it to the archive, they ran a Xerox and then they ran a Xerox of the Xerox. And then they just kept like copying the copy to reduce the quality and make it practically illegible. I mean, that's what it looks like.
Well, that's why I'm like struggling to read some of this stuff, because, you know, these are old documents and there is a lot of artifacting. It makes it difficult, and the fonts and everything. It's just very hard to go through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're taking physical photographs of every document.
Yes.
And, well, I look forward to helping you sort through some of these things and use some technologies to extract some of the information and digest it and
Yes.
process it. One of the things that I was speaking with a friend of mine, and I said, we need to take all this information and we need to dump it into an LLM, a custom-built sort of chat GPT, if you will, but one that we control, one that we have absolute control over. And you could feed all this data, you could feed every single piece of paper into this large language model, and then you can query the information directly. So I'm actually going to try to do that on a rudimentary level, but I mean, there are people out there that I know personally that can execute these things. But, you know, there's so much information. How many more documents do you think there are left? Because, I mean, I heard 500,000 at one point.
So there's 6 million documents in the archives. There's about 80,000 that were just dumped on us. But some of those, even out of the 80,000, we had seen some of the document before, but there was redactions. So the 80,000 might not be everything on the page is new, but typically the redacted part's the most important. And that's what we're getting to see now. And what we really need also are eyes on these documents. So as we make this stuff published, we need people to look at it, because depending on what your background and your context knowledge is, we can extract different things from this. So this is where we really need to all come together as a group and examine these documents as they come out. If you send Gary leads, we're gonna go chase them down. Someone out there can read through this and read between the lines and see things that we're missing. And that's the key here. Together, we are gonna figure out the truth, but it's gonna take time to get there.
Yeah, certainly will. Well, I'm anxious to see what else comes out of this. So, Travis, absolute explosive information, and then what General Michael Flynn revealed about Allen Dulles, and your documents corroborating it, about JFK firing Dulles as the CIA director, and Dulles simply moving to an offsite safe house in D.C. and continued running the agency. Folks, let that sink in for a minute. The president fired the head of an intelligence agency, and that person just kept working, kept giving orders, kept running operations. That's how a shadow government operates. And now with these newly uncovered Angleton documents that you have shared with us, we're seeing just how deep this conspiracy went. So here's my question for you guys watching. All right, ready for this? If they could do this to a president in 1963, what are they capable of doing today? Okay, to anyone who challenges their authority? Drop a comment below. And don't forget to check out our exclusive Next News merch at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com in the merch shop.